This is the podcast, not an interview. This is a conversation. No gimmicks, just reasons. 84 reasons. Come holler at me. What up, everybody? I am being true. This is 84 reasons. No games, no gimmicks, just reasons. Talking to former, present. But today, I don't like to call him a former Gator, though. I mean, this is a Gator great. The Gainesville boys, man. PK Young, been putting them out, going all the way back to 91, 92, 93, 94. Walked on at the University of Florida, 31 career touchdowns. Now doing it in the booth. Coming from parties. The homie. Y'all remember Chris Doering. I call him CD. The great Chris Doering. What's going on with you today, Chris?
Benny, I'm doing well, man. It's good to finally catch up, brother. We've been trying to do this for a couple weeks now, and glad we can make it happen.
I know. I mean, I don't even know where to start. I mean, for you, was it always Florida, though? Because people, obviously, you had to be a Gator fan. What else is going on in Gainesville? Was it always going to be Florida for you, or did you go, I hope it's Florida, but did you go on other visits? Because a lot of times you look at the end game, but recruiting was crazy even back then.
Yeah, well, there was no recruiting going on with me, man. So that was something I only dreamt of. And growing up in Gainesville, you're right, man. Everything around here is so Gator-centric that, I fell in love with it from the time I was 4 or 5 years old. My parents both graduated from Florida. My father was a professor in the College of Pharmacy. We went to not only all the Florida football games, but basketball, baseball, gymnastics, everything University of Florida sports related was what I was consuming, and always dreamt of running out of that tunnel to hear come the Gators and being able to wear the orange and blue in the Swamp at the time, Florida Field, before the Swamp was nicknamed the Swamp. But when I tell everybody I had the greatest senior year in the history of high school senior years. I was all-state in football, all-state in basketball, all-state in baseball. We won the state basketball championship. I was MVP of the state basketball tournament. And I was Sky Masterson, the lead in the musical theater production of Guys and Dolls. So I got a chance to do it all, Benny. And no scholarship offers, not even from, a musical theater school, no arts. I got nothing at all. So it actually turned out to be a blessing in disguise because, if I would have gotten a scholarship to one of those other schools, I probably would have taken it, and it never would have had the same meaning to playing for the school that I grew up loving. I was offered a preferred walk-on spot like I was at Florida, at Florida State. Went up there and actually felt a little bit of, rejection by the Gators for not following through in this plan that I had in my head. So I ended up considering Florida State, but my dad and I were at a Florida State baseball game at Perry Field back my senior year and saw him doing the tomahawk chop and doing all that stuff. I said, man, I can't be a part of that. I know my roots, and ended up at where I was supposed to be, man. Not the path that I dreamt of, but an even more gratifying journey than I ever could have dreamed.
Now, Chris, obviously everybody gonna look at how he ended up and say, "Oh, this is a storybook ending." But you redshirted in '91.
Yeah,
you became you got the scholarship in '92. What is that like? Because everybody wants to play in Florida. I get it, but you was there as a walk-on. What is that red shirt freshman year where you like knowing that, look, man, they don't tell you they're going to give you a scholarship until 92 comes. What was that 91 season like for you, though?
Well, I didn't actually get the scholarship until 93. So it was kind of a progression, that first year walking on and having played for Coach Spurrier, the coach doesn't care about whether you're a scholarship guy or a walk-on guy. He wants to play guys that are coachable, play the way they're coached, and are in great condition, right? He always uses those John Woodenisms. And for me, I showed up. There were 3 scholarship receivers that were signed in my class that year: Sorolla Palmer, Jack Jackson, and Ed West. And I was the 4th in that group, a preferred walk-on. I won the 12-minute run, and you remember how much Coach Spurrier loved the conditioning test. When you were able to do well at that, he got his respect, and so I earned his attention and respect that way. Competed with the rest of those guys. I think I showed everybody that I could play at that level, but I was 6'4", 175 pounds, and needed to put some weight on, and so I did redshirt. My redshirt freshman year in '92, I made the travel squad, so I was one of the top 8 that year, and had my first catch in a blowout loss against Tennessee up in Knoxville, and then got that scholarship, that validation that I've been looking for a long time, Benny, right before the start of my redshirt sophomore year in '93, and everything just kind of happened so quickly. I got that scholarship in 2 days. First game of the season, we're playing a home game against one of those, those directional schools.
Uh-huh.
Catch 4 or 5 passes in that one, and then the second game of the season, we go up to Kentucky, September 11th, 1993, and Coach Spurrier tells me before the game that I'm going to start. So here it is. All of a sudden, I went from walk on to scholarship to starting in the SEC, catch my first career touchdown in the beginning of the fourth quarter against Kentucky. And then I catch the one with 3 seconds left that kind of changed my life there. So everybody kind of remembers me for that touchdown. That was only my second. I had 29 more after that, but it was amazing how quickly my life changed in a matter of a few weeks.
I like what you said about Coach Spurrier. Here now, to us, heart beating out your chest. Hey, Chris, you starting? And for those of you who don't know, he'll just say it. He don't make it dramatic. Chris, what you starting today? And he'll walk off. What?
Yeah.
It's like I always tell people this about Coach Spurrier. Maybe you can validate it. His ability to have an individual, it ain't the same, but an individual relationship with every single player. It ain't like it is with the quarterbacks, but I can just see him walking up to you. Hey, Chris, what you starting today? All right.
Yeah.
Like, and when you think about it, the head coach not supposed to tell you stars. Supposed to be your position coach or the OC, which he is. Yeah. But you catch 2 touchdowns. I went on to catch 29 more. Chris, you had a knack for getting in the end zone. Like, yes, you was a route runner. Yes, like your height, your ability. But what was it about your game that translated so well to what Spurrier did? Because obviously, the streamers, for those who don't know about Spurrier, man, there are no 1st and 10 plays. There are no 2nd and long. No, bro, we're trying to get in the zone. Yeah. I'm gonna get best matchup one-on-one. But was it your route running ability? Was it your knack for picking up the offense? Because I remember this. You, Shane, because Shane Matthews started all out. You talking about coming from Shane was like, what, 15th, way down the depth chart. But what was it about you? 31 touchdown passes, man. That's you and Amari Cooper tied for second all time. Devonta Smith got like a gazillion of them. Yeah. But did you just have a knack for getting in the zone, or was you like, look, man, I'm going to use my size and length and these DBs, man? Was it the catch rates? What were you attested to?
First and foremost, let's go back to what you said about Coach Spurrier. Like, Coach Spurrier was not afraid. One of my older friends calls Coach Spurrier 5 wide, and he calls him 5 wide because of a game. It's 3rd and 17 from our 3-yard line my senior year against Florida State. He goes 5 wide. We go empty, and we convert 3rd and 17. I catch a cover 2 post over the middle of the field to move the chains. Like, he wasn't afraid, man. There was no run the ball and punt. It's say, what do we got to do to get the first down and keep this drive alive and score a touchdown? So, I think I fit in well into that offense. One, I was surrounded by so many great receivers, man. You go back and think about it. Like, I got there. Alonzo Sullivan, Trey Everett were 2 guys that kind of took me under their wings initially. Willie Jackson, Harrison Houston, Aubrey Hill, Jack Jackson, those guys. And then, as my career went on, it was Riedel Anthony, Ike Hilliard, Jaquez Green, Travis McGriff. Like, I was just part of so many great receivers. And you know how it is in the NFL. 5 wide receivers usually make the team. Our wide receiving cores at Florida were better than the majority of the ones that I played on in the NFL. So I was fortunate to be surrounded by so many talented guys that drew the attention of opposing defenses. But my senior year, I caught 17 touchdowns and was named second team All-American and first team All-SEC. And one of the media people asked Coach Spurrier, like, wow, man, Chris had an amazing year, caught 17 touchdowns, and man, how was he able to do that? He goes, I was calling the plays, right? And so a lot of it had to do with Coach trusting me in that part of the field. He was the guy that, knew that I was dependable down in that area, and that, the height, the catch radius, all those things. I think a lot of it had to do too, Benny, with the rapport that I had with Danny Warfel. I mean, Danny and I were great friends. You remember the old Monday night football scrimmages that the young guys would have after practice on Mondays during the season. The guys that didn't play much would get an opportunity to scrimmage. And Danny and I kind of came out together in those scrimmages, made our mark that 93 year. He was a freshman. I was a sophomore, and just kind of progressed together. He and I lived together on the road when we roomed night before games, and we'd always go over all the the plays and what we were thinking one another, and just really felt like we had a great connection there. So I think that benefited us, particularly down in the red zone too.
You talking about trust, which is the hardest thing I had to learn as a player. Like, yeah, you talented, yeah, you gifted, but if the head man don't trust you, you're not gonna play. It took me a long time to understand that, because what happens is everybody's good from where they're coming from. You talked about trust real early. You had to build the trust of Coach Spurrier, the trust with Danny, Shane, whoever you had. Was that something you always knew though? Because the ability aside, they have to trust. It's 3rd and 3 coming out, 3rd and 17, 5 wide.
Yeah.
Like Coach Spurrier, like, look, bro, I can live with it, because he goes, I got 5 of the best players on the field. I'm gonna trust that somebody's gonna win. Like one of these 5 up one. But you talked about the trust aspect of it. Was that something you always understood?
Well, you're right. First and foremost, the trust aspect is always big in any team sport, but more so in Coach Spurrier's offense. And you remember, like, we would run routes on air for hours and hours and hours of practices. It wasn't about beating anybody on the defense specifically. It was the quarterback taking his 3, 5, 7-step drops. It was the receivers taking their exact steps, getting in and out of their breaks at their exact part of the field they're supposed to be in. Quarterbacks trusting the receivers that they're not only going to read the right coverages, but be in the right place at the right time. Coach Spurrier calling the plays, trusting his quarterbacks that they're going to make the right reads. Like, there's just so much that went into everybody being on the same page. And I just think we had such a great rapport, knowledge of the game, the way that we were taught by Coach Dixon and Coach Spurrier helped make us prepared for everything that we saw on game days. Game days were easy, man. Saturdays were easy because of what we did during the week. And I just think that that trust aspect is so huge. And I remember, that feeling even today. I was with Coach Spurrier today, and outside of my parents, I don't know if there's anybody in my life that I've ever wanted to please more than Coach Spurrier. Getting his approval.
Yes.
You talked about how different guys on the team had different relationships. My day, and this happened at Florida, this happened in the NFL when I played for him in Washington. Danny Warfel and I would be in the room together in the dorms during camp, thinking about, like, I can't believe we're grown ass men and we're still here living and dying by what he thinks about us. Like,
yes.
I still to this day want to make sure that I'm doing everything to make him happy, that I'm going to get praise from him. And I'm the oldest child. I don't know about you, Benny, but the oldest child always wants to please, always wants to get the praise. And I think that's one of the hardest things about not playing football anymore, is because you remember, man, as soon as in the NFL, you get done with practice, you're coming in watching the tape, you're getting that feedback immediately. You're getting that praise you need. You watch the game tape on Sunday or Monday, and you're getting that feedback. Like, you don't have that much in life. And I think that needing that praise and approval, particularly from Coach Spurrier, was always something huge for me.
Yeah. But you tell what you're doing now, CD, this is vulnerability side of us as former players, right? Like, the ego and pride is what pushes us through the game. Hey, man, I can't show no weakness. But when you just said what you said, when Spurrier say you can play, when Spurrier say good job, good route, it's different. Because listen, you had Coach D. I had Coach D my senior year. He went from wide receiver to coach. And if they had reality TV back then, me and Coach D is animated. But it's almost like, it almost makes you a better player to say, look, man, I'm not gonna let the team down. But the last thing I want to hear, see, Coach Spurrier saying, can't run that route, can't do this, can't do that. He never yelled, he never screamed, but it's almost like he said, don't say a lot, but say enough to be like Spurrier, you good? Like, no. Like, we had one rule when I played. If you stick one hand up for a pass, you better catch it. Like, you stick one hand up, we play in Kentucky, I did the dumb thing and sticking one hand up, that was the end of my freshman year. Done, over with, it's a wrap. Jesse Palmer, my freshman year, comes in and says, tells the Gainesville Sun, I'm going to lead this team. Coach Spurrier comes in with the paper, reads it, and says, give everybody give Jesse a hand clap. He's an idiot, right? And then Rex Grossman, and then and the story goes on. But Coach Spurrier knew life. You just didn't know that's what he was giving you. Like, because offensive guru, like, you know, did he do the 5 minute 10 with y'all? Did he come out there take his shirt off for like 5 minutes? Him and Jamie and look at you. But at the same time, though, Chris, you what I like to call PhD in route running. Like, and was there a certain route that you like more than others? You can get up on that, but was there a certain one you get to say, "Hey man, I'm about to route this cornerback up"?
Let me go back to what you said first and foremost about Coach Spurrier, because you're right. He didn't really yell a bunch, but he used the sarcasm to get to you, right? And I tell everybody all the time, the thing you never wanted to hear is, "Hey, it's not your fault. It's my fault for putting you in there, Chris."
Yeah.
You know, that was the thing that you didn't want to hear. And so, you know, I always tried to please him. You didn't want to hear that, and you didn't want to hear the pregame speech where he went around in the locker room. "All right, Benny. All right, Chris. All right, my man." You know, if he hit you with "my man," that means he forgot your name, and that wasn't a good thing either. So that was what you wanted to avoid. But in terms of routes that I loved, man, you know, I played a lot. And one more thing, what you said, his perception was reality, right? So like that sophomore year of mine, 93 catch the pass against Kentucky. You know, I catch 12 passes against Mississippi State, 3 touchdowns in that game. All of a sudden, I look up. I'm leading. I went from walk on. I'm leading the SEC in catches, and I'm like, this is amazing. And then the season goes on, and something happened, and all of a sudden, I was phased out of the offense. You know how that went? Like you could be his guy. Everything's rolling, and then I'll do something wrong, and it changes his perception, and now all of a sudden, you're phased out. So that happened to me in my sophomore year. I got phased out, and in my junior year, I got phased out, and finally, my senior year, I was able to play wire to wire. Had 70 catches that year for over 1,000 yards, but like it really was about him, you know, making sure you didn't do anything that was going to get you in the doghouse. And when I say doghouse, I'm not talking about breaking rules. It's like you putting one hand up or busting a route or some read that you're making. But yeah, man, it was so much fun, and I'll tell you, it was great too, Benny. Like getting a chance to not only play at Florida with him, but I tore my Achilles in the NFL when I was playing with the Broncos back in 2000. Tried to come back in 2001, wasn't quite ready. So I was out of the league. I thought I was going to have to go play in the Arena League. I actually signed with the Carolina Cobras, and you know, thinking I was going to have to get back to the NFL through that path. Fortunately, I was probably one of the only people that was happy about Coach Spurrier leaving Florida, because I knew going to the NFL he was going to, you know, bring me on, and he did. And just getting back to that old language again, getting back to corkers and steamers and, you know, all the things that we ran, and how natural that was. And then, you know, teaching everybody else on that wide receiver core how to go about running those routes and what we were doing. And a lot of what I did early on was playing in the slot. You know, I love playing that kind of stand-up wide position that you caught so many of the balls of too, man, working the seams and cover 2 posts and corners, and loved all of that. From the outside, I loved the old 8 route, the way we ran the corners inside, square them up to 15 and take it to 18 to 22. Like those are some of my favorite routes to run, man.
What do you see the wide receiver position in the SEC is crazy, right? I mean, everybody wants a Jamar Chase, a Justin Jefferson. Yeah. You know, everybody wants an Amari Cooper, a Chris Doering, but everything's spread now. Like y'all were ahead of y'all time with the offense that y'all was running, but you got to have the personnel, got to have the quarterback. Y'all had that. Everybody wants that now. Like y'all doing it in the early 90s, but receivers can run. Receivers can separate, but can they start and stop? Like they have a problem with, hey man, you straight line, you a 4-3, but you can't run a dig. Yeah. You can't even run a post corner. God forbid I ask you to run a double move. Mm-hmm. You got to, what do you see the wide receiver position like like happening right now in the SEC with so much fanfare on?
Well, you make a good point too about how much emphasis is put on speed. And I understand, you know, you want to have guys that can threaten the defensive back, get him out of his back pedal. But at the same time, there's something to be said for your playing speed. Yeah, I feel like I always played fast. I always got a good jump at the line of scrimmage, and did a good job of making people think I was faster with my shoulder lead and arm pump and all those things, and being able to get in and out of breaks and put your foot in the ground and separate. And you know this, man, like, when you get to the NFL level, you ain't running by too many guys. You know, I mean, the NFL is about, you know, creating just enough space for you to catch the football, use your body, you know, holding guys off with leverage. Those things are important. So I think I learned a lot of that at Florida that helped me in the NFL. And how many guys Do you remember, Benny, when you were coming out, like when you were in college and you saw these guys that were these great receivers and putting up numbers, and all of a sudden they get to the NFL and they play on your team, you're like, this dude doesn't have a clue about how to run a route or how to set somebody up or how to catch the football. It's amazing. At some level, you're eventually going to catch up with the level of athleticism you have. Then it comes down to technique and attention to detail. And I think that's something I learned very well from Coach Spurrier and from Coach Dixon. As far as the offenses today, man, we were ahead of our time. All the spread stuff you're seeing right now goes back to a lot of what we were doing in the early 90s, what he was doing back at Duke in the late 80s. And so, being able to see his impact on not only college football, but NFL football, high school football in general, what he did with the passing game. I would love, my NFL career was, I played 9 years in the league, but the catch total was limited. Didn't get a chance to play a ton because I'd play on third downs and I'd play in 2-minute situations. Now in the NFL, they're going 3 and 4 wide receivers on first and second downs. Like, I'd love to play in the league today because the proliferation of the passing game, the opportunity to be out there on the field more. So I think I would have done really well in the way that the game's played today. I think you're seeing a lot of guys come into college football now, much more experience because of how many how many teams are throwing the ball in high school, the 7-on-7 stuff. I'm not a huge fan of 7-on-7, but I do think it's helped the development of some of the receivers and the passing game in general. But this is fun. I love getting to cover this league and getting to watch all the great receivers that have come through here over the last few years. You mentioned, the record that I held. I had that SEC touchdown record for 25 years, and then Devonta Smith comes through and just completely urinates all over that record, man. Just blew it away. So it's been fun to watch all of these different guys and how the passing game in the league when I was a kid, and even right until Coach Spurrier got to the SEC, it was 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Everybody was running the football. It's about having the Bo Jackson, Herschel Walkers in your backfield, and now it's about having that quarterback and having guys that can go get it in the passing game.
The voice you hear right now is Chris Doering, second team All-American, first team All-SEC, University of Florida Athletic Hall of Fame, Florida Georgia Game Hall of Fame, tied for second all-time in the SEC, 31 career touchdowns, tied with Amari Cooper, second to Devonta Smith. I think he got like 100 of them. I lost count. But you talk about covering the SEC. How exciting is that? Because you all around the SEC, from the stadiums to the coaches to the coaches. What is it about the SEC? Because you, as a player, it's different when you behind the camera now. But
yeah,
how crazy is it? Going around the SEC, seeing all the hottie toddies, and you're in Arkansas this week. How was it been?
Well, first and foremost, I when I got done playing, man, I wanted to stay involved in football. And you remember leaving the NFL facilities at 5 or 5:30 or whenever we were getting out of there. The coaches were just getting their dinner and getting ready to have a whole another 8 hours or more of work. So the idea of getting into coaching and never seeing my family and having that unsettled life of moving all over just didn't appeal to me. So getting into the world of media and TV specifically was kind of the next best thing. And I really have been so grateful to not only have the chance to do what I do at ESPN and the SEC Network, but to do it covering the conference that I know the most about, that I'm the most passionate about. I lived this conference as a kid growing up in that stadium, watching not only the Florida guys, but so many of the great iconic SEC players during the 80s and early 90s. And then, playing in this league and now covering it. I think it's a dream come true to get to do what I do, not only for the SEC Network, but with SiriusXM covering the SEC as well. And you mentioned it going around. There's so many great traditions, and I think the thing that I've realized, as much as I've born and bred Gator, orange and blue, I still, you go to Georgia or you go to Tennessee, and they got great traditions there. They're just different traditions. They're different colors. They got great people there. And so I still cheer for Florida as hard as I possibly can. But I love getting a chance to go around and learn so much more about all of these different traditions and the guys that have played there before and the guys that are there now. It's a who's who of coaches in this conference. And all eyes are on the SEC every single Saturday during the fall. And I'm so grateful to get a chance to cover it the way I do.
Obviously, Chris, we're in the NIL era. I mean, it's only growing every single day. Nothing specific, but what do you see NIL like impacting the SEC or college football as a whole? Because one, I do think it's a good thing, but it's just like when we go to the NFL. People assume Chris Doering is in the NFL. He's making a bunch of money. Chris Doering is 21, 22 years old. I don't know about money. I'll take it. I'll take it. But I don't know about financial literacy. I don't know about 33% tax bracket. But that's when you're a professional. Now, I'm 18 years old, 19 years old, sometimes 17 years old. Where do you see the future of NIL, and do you think it's a good or bad thing?
Well, there's a couple sides to it. First and foremost, I do think that players should be entitled to making money off of their name, their image, and their likeness. The opportunity to sell jerseys with their number and name on it, the opportunity to be on video games with your number and name on it, the opportunity to go sign autographs somewhere, the chance to do commercials for, a local car dealership. Those things I think were the intention of NIL. NIL should not and is not allowed to be used as a recruiting inducement. It's not pay for play, and that's what it's become because the NCAA refuses to try to enforce what the rules are. Everybody knows what's going on, and everybody acts like nothing's happening. And I think that's an absolute joke. The fact that the Jaden Rashada thing was incredibly embarrassing to me. I'm sure it probably was embarrassing to you as a Florida guy. The fact that we were going to pay a high school senior that never played a single down of college football over 13 million. Guys like Danny Warfel, Shane Matthews, Emmitt Smith, all of these folks that deserve to make that kind of money as a Florida Gator didn't have that chance. And here's a kid that hadn't even put a uniform on yet that was going to get a $500,000 payout in December. I don't blame the kid because he was doing, what he could to get his money, but the system is definitely broken and it's unsustainable, and they have to find a way to start creating a little bit of balance. The fact that there's some schools that are committing to NIL the way that they have, and others that don't have the means to do so, it's going to create an even bigger disparity than the one that already exists. And so I do think there needs to be somebody take the lead, whether that's the Power Five conferences breaking off and creating their own deal. But somebody's got to take over and keep this train on the tracks, or else it's going to get far beyond repair.
You mentioned guys like Danny Warfel, like Emmitt Smith, Lomas, guys like Lomas Brown, Mike Peters, just Fred Taylor. The thing about NIL that I don't understand is this. I think it should have something to do with, not me, I don't care about me, but guys who contributed so much. Like Tim Tebow don't need nobody's money. I get it. But you still utilizing these people's names, their images, their likeness, their celebrity. How can NIL go that far to where you saying, hey man, deal with grown men whose contribution is, they are legends of the game, but you could do something. And it might not be nothing monetary, but look, when I think of college football, when I think of the SEC, and this is, I don't care who, and yes, I'm biased, you can't play the quarterback position better than Danny Warfel. Mm-hmm. I love Tim Tebow, but you can't. You just can't. You can't, affect the game, like a Marshall or a Fred Tate. You just can't. And what happens is we're giving players money based off of what they could become. But that's anybody. Yeah, he could become this, he could become that. I hope NIL does some type of legend for the game. Listen, I don't need anything. People like, I don't care. I'm just saying, do you see NIL being able to advance like that?
Well, I think there should be something. We've tried to do this in the past for some sort of fund to take care of former Gators that maybe have not been able to take care of themselves or have some medical issues that arise. Like I still think, it's crazy. When I left the NFL, we were covered by health insurance for 5 years after our last season. Like most of the health things aren't going to show up in 5 years. And I know they've changed the way that they go about, providing health care for players longer. But what about college players? What about these guys that played in the 80s and the 90s that never made it to the NFL, that have health issues that are starting to raise their heads now as they get a little bit older? I think there's something needs to be done for those folks. I'm with you. Like, I don't necessarily need anything monetary from what's going on now, but I think there are other people that do. And I'll go back to this. Like, as much as I do think that there is a place for players to receive something for being a part of building the program and people buying jerseys and autographs and all that stuff. Man, I made more money outside of after my football career in the NFL. The University of Florida, the degree, the diploma on my wall in my office, the opportunity to play football and develop my skills and put up those things gave me a launching pad that created more opportunity for me than any of the money that I ever made in the NFL. What I do on television, what I do with my mortgage company that just is about to celebrate its 16th year, what I get a chance to do on radio, all of those things came because I got a journalism degree at the University of Florida and met people and made connections and got my name out there because I played football. So this idea that a scholarship and a degree doesn't mean anything doesn't sit well with me, especially as a guy that walked on and knew the cost of attendance and having that paid for by my family. And so I still think that there is something that needs to be said for that chance to go to college for that kid that's nobody in his family has ever gone before. Now all of a sudden he gets a chance to go to college and get a degree and what that can do. We still need to recognize the importance of that aspect of college football too.
Jim McElwain, Dan Mullen, Billy Napier. You cover the SEC. Obviously, we biased when it comes to them Gators. How hard is it to build a program like Florida? Like you don't lack anything. $85 million facility, a $7.1 million coach. Not that I'm counting this money or anything. The best of everything, right? What top 10 recruiting class?
Yeah.
But what does it take in your mind, crew? What is the difference in having a 5-star caliber roster, but having that product on the field, that consistent product on the field year in and year out?
You know what's funny? I heard this today from Coach Spurrier. I was with him, and he said he was listening to Paul Feinbaum, and they were talking about the projections of I think it was total draftable guys this year, guys that were expected to go in the 7-round draft. That in the SEC, it was Alabama and Georgia, and the team with the third most expected draft picks was Florida. Like, we talk about this team, not having talent, but according to the NFL, as the draft experts go, there's a lot of talent. So I think it goes back to one thing, Ben, and that's the quarterback position. Like, the reason Florida struggled for as long as they did, they couldn't find that quarterback. After Tim Tebow left after 2009, go through that whole litany of quarterbacks that played at Florida. The only one that ever really took Florida anywhere was a guy that probably wouldn't have got in there if Felipe Franks hadn't got hurt. I mean, Kyle Trask was on the bench, and Kyle Trask turned out to be a guy that elevated Florida back to the SEC championship game. As much as I hate to say it and give quarterbacks credit, the quarterback position is the most important position in all of team sports. And if you don't have that guy as your trigger man, you're going to be limited in what you're able to do. And Florida just hasn't been able to find the right guy in that period of time since Tebow left to be able to have that consistent high level achieving type of season that we got used to in the 90s when you went from Shane Matthews to Danny Warfel to Jesse to Doug to Rex. I mean, there's just so many great quarterbacks, and Florida just hadn't been able to find that right guy and develop them. They had him at times, right? Jeff Driscoll played in the NFL for a long time. Didn't work out here. Jacoby Brissett still plays in the NFL now. Yeah. Didn't get his opportunity, didn't get developed. Like, you have to find that guy. You have to develop him. You have to put him in a position to be successful.
Billy Napier, going into year two, listen, whatever happened in year one, it happened. I mean, the talent and the overall record didn't kind of coincide with each other. But the pressures of a head coach in the SEC, Billy Napier in particular, what are the things that we don't, I mean, I do it, but we don't take into context of the fact that, look, we know that he's making a bunch of money. He's at Florida, but that don't mean you're going to just go out there and dominate in the SEC East. That's right now, them boys from Athens, they the gold standard, not just in the East, but in college football.
Yeah, no, it's gotten tough. Sledding's gotten tougher, right? Not only is Georgia kind of raised the bar in the conference and college football in general, Tennessee all of a sudden comes out of nowhere and has a double-digit win season. Kentucky, a team that used to be the laughingstock of the SEC, now has asserted themselves in the last couple of years. And I think they're 3-2 against Florida in the last 5 games. So, I mean, it's gotten more difficult. Clearly, Florida has to upgrade their talent. I mentioned the quarterback position, but there's a lot of other positions that need to have upgrade, particularly the defensive line. I honestly believe you look at Florida's defensive struggles over the last couple of years is because they haven't had those dudes. We used to forever had those dudes on the defensive
Yes.
line. You know, you go back to my time there, Kevin Carter, Ellis Johnson, Mark Campbell, like so many of those guys. You move on, big money, Gerard Warren, like I mean,
Alex
just
Brown. Yeah.
yeah, Alex Brown. You look at what happened later on when they were able to get Dominic Easley and some of those plays. Like Florida has always been able to develop defensive linemen, recruiting defensive linemen. You know this. There's only a limited number of guys that are that big and that athletic, right? You can't have the two often, and so Florida has a bunch of them in the state. But unfortunately, the best talent in Florida, not only at that position, but at all positions, now goes to Georgia, Alabama, Clemson. Florida's got to find a way to keep that talent within the state. Florida State and Miami are dealing with the same issue, and that's why you're seeing all three programs mired in mediocrity.
Chris, man, before I let you out, and we were talking about the quarterback position a lot today. Anthony Richardson. Some people say he not going to make it out of the top 10. Some people say he might go number 1 overall. But when you think about what the quarterback position is in the NFL now I need a guy that can do both. I need a guy that can throw. I need a guy that can run. I need a guy that can be center of the running game. I need a guy that can improvise. 6'4", what? He's going to be about 230, 235. I don't know what he's going to run. He's going to be fast. You are a GM, and y'all picking Anthony Richardson. What are you getting in a player like that?
Here's what you're doing. If you're the GM that picks him in the top 10, you're putting your career on the line. You're riding and dying with this one guy, right? And I understand the fascination. There's nothing that tantalizes NFL scouts, coaches, GMs like talent, like measurables. And Anthony Richardson is going to have all of those. And I know a lot of Gator fans like, oh, he needs to come back and stay and develop. He hadn't played a lot of quarterback. They're right. He hadn't had a ton of reps. He is very green still. He needs more reps. But when you can come out and be a first-round pick or a top 10 pick or the number 1 overall pick, there is no reason to come back. So I don't have anything negative to say about his decision to go. I think he's making the right decision. The team that drafts him has to understand that this is a developmental project. This is not a plug-and-play guy right out of the gates. I think you could take a guy like Bryce Young and do that, but I don't think you can do that with Anthony Richardson. Here's what scares me about Anthony. And I love the guy. He's a Gator. He's a Gainesville boy. I've followed him for a long time. I'm cheering for him. But the things that concern me, the inexperience is something that teams are going to live with. But the injury, he's had a lot of injuries over the years. And you know guys that have that sort of fast twitch muscle, like how easily those things can get pulled or torn. I worry about his ability to stay in the lineup, to be able to take hits. And the other thing is his ability to lead and when things go wrong, get himself back on track. I go back to that Kentucky game. He struggled right out of the gate, got hit early, made some mistakes, and never could quite get things going. And at one point in the season, he had thrown more touchdowns to the other team than he had his own team. And he was talking about how that affected him. Like, I don't care. One, you got to be able to turn the page. But two, if it really does bother you, don't say it in front of the media. Don't say it to anybody. Keep that inside of yourself. And so he's got to figure out a way to be able to turn the page when something bad goes wrong or when something wrong goes. You got to be able to move on from that. And I think he's got to find a way to really get his teammates to rally around him. He's best when he's involved in the run game. And that's what puzzled me the most about Florida's season this year. When he was involved in the run game, in the Utah game, in the Tennessee game, I thought that was a great game plan, the way they used him on some of the zone read stuff, the options, the bootlegs and nakeds. I mean, he puts pressure on an opposing defense when he's outside of the pocket. Asking him to stay in the pocket, be a pocket guy, takes away everything that he does well. So you got to be willing to move him around. You got to be willing to run him and understand that he's got to find a way to make sure he's getting down and not taking hits. I think he's got a lot of potential, but there's got to be a lot of development and being in the right spot with the right coaches that are patient and helping him to get to where he has the potential to get.
All right, Chris, man, before I let you out of here, man, your favorite Coach Spurrier moment or your favorite Coach Spurrier story?
Ooh, man, so many of them, man. I just
the one he wouldn't mind you telling us, because
yeah. well, I'd say this though. Is this a family friendly podcast?
Yeah. You can listen. Yes, sir. You
remember
how you feeling?
You remember that my favorite thing was like beginning of camp every year, he'd write shit, damn, and hell. Like those were the 3 cuss words you could say. You weren't allowed to say the F word, right? But
Yeah.
as soon as something went wrong in the game, there was some MFing going on the sidelines, So it was
that was our list. That wasn't his list. That was for us.
Yeah, that's true. But and I remember again, I'll push the limits here a little bit. We're playing in South Carolina my senior year, 95. We're down, get close to the red zone. We call a timeout. I'm all hyped up. I'm like, Coach, throw me the fade. I got a fucking 5-foot guy covering me. And he looks at me and he goes, oh, Chris, we don't need that. Like in the middle of the whole thing, he's correcting me for using the F word out there. So it's something that he still to this day, you won't catch him saying unless he's in the midst of calling plays on the sideline and something doesn't go his way.
Chris, man, first and foremost, I appreciate you taking the time. I mean, 30. It's funny, right? When Devonta Smith broke your record, right? And they say, oh, he just broke Chris Doering's record. My mom goes, my mom didn't know my mom was a football historian. I wasn't good in high school. My mom goes, Chris Doering from Florida? She said, I remember, she said, I used to watch him. She said, he's real tall. He's real tall and lanky. She said, he scored a lot of touchdowns. I said, well, then my mama going to say, does Chris Doering have a son? Because we need some guys to get back. My mama talk trash about Florida all the time. But I remember this. I want to say it's 2011 or 12. I'm trying to get into this media thing. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I remember calling you out the blast. I'm gonna call Chris Doering. I don't know if SEC Network was coming. I think he was already doing something. And I asked you. I said, man, you think I can do it? He's like, yeah, then you'll be good. It's almost like no matter what, we need each other for validation. If we don't act like we don't, if we don't walk around like, no, I said Chris Doering's doing it. I'm gonna call Chris.
Yeah.
Chris came on, and what happens is though, you also let me know you could be yourself. Like when I see you on TV, I said, that's Chris, man. Like I don't know if your producer say, Chris, we need you. This is what I do, bro. Get somebody else to do the skits. And I will say this, Chris, you pay up your bets, man. You lose a bet. Listen, if the show comes on, I'm like, where Chris at? He's over there. Chris done lost a bet.
Yeah, 4 years in a row. 4 years in a row, I've lost that LSU bet to Peter Burns. And so I'm hoping that someday Florida actually wins and he has to pay up there. But you're right, though. I'll say this, man. Like, obviously, Gators are going to stick together, man. To get a call from you asking about, some of the things that you were interested in the media world, it's a pleasure for me to talk to you about that. Patrick Young's a guy that I connected with before he started working at the SEC Network when he was going for his audition, and so proud of not only what he's done with his broadcasting career, but how he's impacted so many people, turning that negative into a positive and just a great representative of the University of Florida. But I think about guys that helped me. Todd Blackledge is the guy that gave me his number early on, and I would call him and ask him about how he prepared and the things that he does to help, get himself ready to go. I think about what you just said about being myself. Like for so long, I tried to act on air like what I had seen other people doing. And authenticity, people know authenticity, right? You have to find a way to be who you are on television the same way that you are off air, minus the cussing. So I think I've done better with that as I've gotten more reps. And then I look at still like, I was on, and this was last 2 SEC media days ago. I'm up there doing my thing with PB on set. When I get off, I check Twitter. I got a message from Kirk Herbstreit. Kirk Herbstreit's the gold standard of broadcasting and telling me how much he likes what I do and encouraging me. And so I think there's always people that we all look up to, that we owe it to as people help us, we help other people. And it's a great business for us former athletes to be able to get into and stay involved with football and get that same adrenaline rush. Like nothing gets me going like catching a touchdown in front of 100,000 people. And you don't get that opportunity much in life after your career is over with. But being on live television on Saturday night, and talking about SEC football, man, is the next best thing. And it gives me that adrenaline rush that I crave so much.